Morning. Some days it's really difficult to get your mind working, isn't it? I don't know if you get that. I certainly do. It feels like I'm clogged. But anyway, I'm trying to think into... See, when I get mentally clogged, what I try to do is just focus my mental attention on something I've been thinking about before. You know, one of these videos that I've made, or a bit of reading I've done, or just an idea. And just see if I can just not exactly narrow my focus down, but try to illuminate that one idea, bring it to focus, do something like that with it, so that it takes up more of my mind and I can apply myself more to that. Because at the moment, as I say, I'm just full of cotton wool, you know, my mind's turning over and all kinds of other shit really, and it's stopping me, it's really unproductive. I'm spinning my cognitive wheels, so to speak. Anyway, you don't really need to know that. I'm just thinking about the thing that I'm trying to direct my attention onto is to the Aymara again. Now, the Aymara is that society of people in South America whose language and apparently whose thought conceptualizes time very differently to ours. Our conception of time is that the future is in front of us and the past is behind us. And that appears, you know, that's evidenced by the way it's used in language, you know. So we talk about as if we're moving towards the future, or the deadline is approaching, or I'm looking forward to something, that kind of stuff. And we do these kind of gestures to mean the future, and these kind of gestures to mean the past. And the Aymara, as I said, do the opposite. You know, they conceptualise the past as the area behind them as the future, and the area in front of them as the past. And that appears in their language differently, and it appears in their gestures and so on differently. But I think there must be a difference as well in the... well, I guess I'm just kind of wondering what differences either that produces in terms of their worldview, one of their worldviews, or you know, what differences exist in that are powering that conceptual difference about what time is. Because when I think about time and the future, there's two things that happen for me, and I think this is general because I've looked at the kind of language studies for this. One is that the future is moving towards you, so we say the deadline is approaching, as if here I am standing in the flow of time, and time is flowing towards me, bringing the future towards me, and taking the past away from me behind like that. One is like that. And the other is that I am walking into the future. An active principle. I'm not just standing passively watching the future approach. The other one is that I am actually moving into the future. Just trying to think about how that would appear in language. I can't think of an example of that, I'm afraid, but there are examples about how that use of the time as a journey metaphor works out. That we do quite often conceptualise ourselves as walking into a future, travelling into a future, as well as a future travelling towards us, and perhaps even having some choices as a result of that. You know, if I see the future approaching, I can take steps to maybe step out of the way of an approaching catastrophe, or if I see a fork in the road ahead in the road of time, you know, I can start making choices about which future to move into. So it feels that's part of that metaphor, isn't it? How that's being used. If the future is ahead of me and I can see the future, then I can and I'm moving towards it, not just that it's moving towards me. Anyway, that's just that really. But if you remember the Aymara, if that's your concept, that the past is in front of you and the future is behind you, then two things. I think first of all it's more likely to prioritise the passive, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. You know, I guess they could think of themselves as doing this, which is how I indicated it in the previous video, moving backwards into an unknown future. But I think it's more likely there's a more, I'll say fatalistic rather than passive. I think it's possibly more likely that they have a more fatalistic approach where you stand and the future washes over you and then you see it disappear into the past in front of you, where you see it diminish with distance into the distant past in front of you. You know, it's this kind of move, with the future constantly surprising you, because here it is, whoop, something else there. And your ability to guess what the future holds wouldn't appear to be as accurate as ours. You know, I'm looking ahead here in this path, and if this is the metaphor for how I'm seeing time, I have the illusion of making good guesses about what the future holds. If this is my view of time, and that's the future over there, my guesses about what the future holds are going to be dependent upon a kind of extrapolation of what I can see from the past, much more than an apparently direct view. So that's the first thing. You know, I'm guessing that if you're in the Amara, you might be more fatalistic, more passive. There'll probably be more use of the idea that the future is moving towards you, albeit from the back, and far less, if at all, a use of the idea that you are moving towards the future. Just a reminder, ours uses both. Our language and thought uses the idea that the future is approaching us from the front, or we're approaching the future from the front. If in the Amara, I guess the dominant model would be the future is approaching you from the back, with you just standing in the river, watching things sweep past you. And the other thing, I guess, might be a part of that, and if I was an anthropologist, this might be where I would go to study, might be an attitude towards choice and fatalism, and the ability to determine one's future. You know, if I'm facing forward into the future and I can see the fork in the road ahead, then I have at the very least an illusion of choice. But if you're a member of the Amara and the future is behind you, you can't see the forks in the road. You can only guess what the future might hold, as I say, from an extrapolation from the past, and that's far less active. There's far less implied choice making going on there, isn't there? Morning. Come on, please. So I don't know. My future contains a gentleman walking a dog look. Except it's my past, of course, unless we're all living the world backwards, which we probably are. So it's probably just a reverse engineered life, lived from the end, or extrapolated from the beginning and end points, like a Lagrange equation. I don't know. That's my physical future right there, look. There's a fork in the road. No, there's a curve in the road, look. What lies around that inclination? Nothing.